So this video is talking about how the first century church, in a lot of ways, they were very politically incorrect to the culture that they lived in. And when I say politically incorrect, I don't mean that they were saying things that were bigoted or hateful or using phrases that were not acceptable during that time, but rather they didn't fit in to their culture because of the way they lived. There's this book here. We're going to watch this video here in a second about by the preacher Matt Chandler. He's a preacher from the Village Church, and I'll put the link to his entire sermon below. It's a great sermon talking about hope during the Christmas season. But he talks about this author, this atheist by the name of Tim Holland. And Tim Holland is this atheist who was looking back throughout history trying to figure out where is it and when is it that in history that people started getting this idea that we should treat everybody as equals. This idea of that nobody should be looked down on because of their race or because of their gender or anything like that. And as Tim Holland did research, he began to realize that didn't exist until the first century church. And I love the point that Matt Chandler makes in this video. He makes this point of saying that it's almost that Tim Holland is saying that as he looks back, he realizes this is where this idea of inclusion and that everybody has the right to be loved and treated equally, that this idea came from Christianity, but because he's an atheist, he's kind of saying we've tried to cover up that idea because we don't want it to come from Christianity. I think it's interesting that Psalms chapter 2, King David wrote about how there are various times throughout history whenever there will be generations, there will be kings and rulers or nations, they'll rise up against God. And they will say, we want to rebel against God. Who does this God think he is that he can tell us who we are and how to live our lives? So we'll rebel against him and we'll rebel against his anointed one. And I love the conclusion that Matt Chandler makes in this video. He talks about it's almost like the world is wanting everything that the king has to offer. God and Jesus, they're the ones who brought down this idea that we should all be treated equally, that we should all be on a level playing field. But the world has rebelled. This generation and our culture is so rebelled against God. They're trying to get rid of God. They're trying to cover up where all this came from because they don't want it to come from Christianity. But that's the starting place of this idea that we're all equal and we all should be treated the same. Let's watch this video.
Now, as of 2017, there were 2.3 billion Christians that called Jesus Lord. That's a pretty massive empire. 2.3 billion people call Christ King. That is a limitlessly expanding empire, and I would just plead with you not to believe the propaganda that we're somehow now shrinking. Now, the West is shrinking because it got a little cocky. But in the southern hemispheres, in Asia, in South America, in Africa, it's exploding. Man, I'm president of Acts 29. We are seeing astronomical growth in Africa, in Asia, in India. Right, so I'm just saying, don't believe the hype. Is there a lot of deconstruction going on already? Absolutely. But I would think you could just look at the air we're breathing and figure out why that's going on. It's a terrible and sad thing. I would say that you also see, and here's what I love about this 2.3 billion people, it's not tied to any one ethnicity. Despite a lot of press, Christianity is not the white man's religion. That's absurd. Right? By the way, no, it's not tied to any ethnicity. It's not tied to geography. Guys, you're in Dallas worshiping Jesus. How'd that happen? We just read the Bible in Indonesian. We plan a church that's doing it in Japanese right now. Right? We need to keep talking about it. I mean, it's not tied to any geographic region. It's not like this is the Christian part of the world. That's not how this works. Like the biggest revival in the world right now is taking place in the Middle East, in Iran in particular. Like I don't know anything about closed countries and hard ground. That stuff's laughable to the king whose empire is limitlessly expanding, right? The Western world is so molded and shaped by this kingdom that it can't hardly talk without speaking of things that Jesus' reign and rule brought into existence. the language of progressivism doesn't exist without the reign and rule of Jesus Christ. It simply does not. Let me read this quote. It's a big quote, but I love it. It's from Tom Holland, not a believer. He's just a historian, not a Christian, wrote this giant book on Christianity and didn't convert, right? So this isn't slanted. I don't know that he's a huge fan of ours, but he's honest. Here's it. This will give you a flavor of what he's doing. This is near the end of the book. The West, over the duration of its global hegemony, had become skilled in the art of repackaging Christian concepts for non-Christian audiences. He's arguing, man, if you take human rights away from its birthplace, right? The Church of Jesus Christ, that medieval lawyer is talking about the Catholic Church's organization around moral law for human flourishing. Let's take the idea of human rights from there. Let's obscure its origins. Let's make it secular in its nature, divorce it from its church, and then more people will sign up for it. Here's Holland's argument. Holland's argument is feminism doesn't exist without the reign and rule of Jesus Christ. He's saying that human rights doesn't exist. You think there were human rights in Rome? You think in the ancient Near East, there was value placed on women and children and those with deformities and those with special needs? They were traded like cattle, killed altogether, or just abandoned and left to die. What changed? The Church of Jesus Christ shows up on the scene, and it says, no, women are equal in dignity and value, and children must be protected. And then what's happened is the secular world kind of snatched that, calls us the bigots, while using our language to kind of promote what they believe is utopia. They want the kingdom without the king, and Holland, without even knowing it, as an atheist, is saying, we got all that from the Christians. Isn't that crazy? He's like, we got all of it. And what we got to do, though, is we got to pretend that we didn't. We got to get rid of our steps. Which is why they can accuse us of the things they can accuse us of while using our words. It's wild, man. It's demonic judo. Here's what I mean by that. The Church of Jesus Christ, first wave feminism, born out of that. Right? That suffrage, that's women are equal in dignity, value, and worth. It actually starts back in the 1300s when the church made it illegal for dads to trade their daughters for cattle and lands. And the church establishes marriage as an institution for the protection of women and children. Nothing has stopped his reign, his rule, his influence. No tyrannical regime. No group or organization or campaign that hates us or wants to smear who we are. And you and I sit in a place in human history where we can actually see it. We can actually see it. Gosh, we're not just seeing it, we're actually caught up in it. Like you and I, we're just caught up in this. Like the reign and the rule of God. And I'm wondering if peace isn't reigning and ruling in your heart. I'm wondering if you, like many today, want the kingdom without the king. You want peace? You want to feel rooted? You want to feel safe? You want to feel, but not with Jesus, just his stuff. You want the kingdom without the king. And I'm wondering how much of your anxiety is tied to refusing to choose to believe that he's on his throne.